Hello and good evening, everybody. And tonight I would like to welcome everybody to episode 54 of Album Rant. And tonight I thought it would be a very good idea to return to the world of AC/DC. And I have talked about them a few times on this channel. I have reviewed their 1992 live album. I have reviewed what some kind of sort of think is their debut album. It was the international version of High Voltage. And yeah, High Voltage was their debut album, but what I reviewed was the international version with a different track list. And funny enough, most of those tracks were from a different album called TNT. But anyways, what I'm going to do tonight is I am going to focus my attention on their fourth studio album released in 1977 entitled Let There Be Rock. But just a quick recap of, how we got here and what exactly I'm doing. Well, again, they are an Australian rock band. Some call them heavy metal. I think the band themselves has said that they're not heavy metal, they're just rock and roll. I don't know. I don't care. All I know is that I love them. But they released their very first debut record in the year 1975. And as I mentioned previously, it was entitled High Voltage. And to be honest, I think at least out of these early records, it is easily their weakest. They hadn't fully developed the sound that they're most well known for. It's incredibly glammy, believe it or not. And a lot of the songs, they seem more bluesy and kind of flat in comparison to some of the other stuff that they would do later. But I mean, it's not like there were some highlights. I mean, I love Soul Stripper. I enjoy Show Business. They did a pretty good cover of Baby Please Don't Go. And of course, there is the really bizarre and totally uncharacteristic love song, which brings back some painful memories for me, but that's another story, maybe for my therapist. But having said all that, later that year, they kind of streamlined their approach a little bit, and they released their second studio release entitled TNT later that year in 1975. And this had a much slicker production to it. They really ditched most of the blues influences that were on that first album, and they totally got rid of the glam rock, which I am really, really thankful for. But this album included a lot of the songs that most people associate with the band, such as It's a Long Way to the Top if you want to rock and roll singer, The Jack, which is one of the songs on there that was still a little bit bluesy, but it was hilarious, I'll say that. We had Live Wire. We had the title track, TNT. We had Rocker. We have Can I Sit Next to You, Girl? We have the song High Voltage, which was not on the album High Voltage for some reason. And then we had a cover of Chuck Berry's School Days, and I really, really loved it. But unfortunately, they did not really do so well with critics. Given their very, very sleazy nature and simplistic style, I can kind of see that. But then later, the next year, in 1976, they released their third studio release entitled Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. And a lot of people just associate that album with the title track. And I'm not going to lie, it is a great title track. Comes on the radio all the time. It's performed in concert all the time. It is a stone cold classic. Still incredibly sleazy, but that's what I love about it. But I mean, there still were some other highlights on the album, such as Ain't No Fun Waiting Around to Be a Millionaire. We had the kind of ballady song Right On, is still kind of having those blues influences, but again, it was only one song, and again, it had a different sound from that debut High Voltage album. We also had Problem Child, which I will be talking about later. We had Squealer, and of course, we had the anthemic, the thunderous Jailbreak. Well, unfortunately, like I said, at the time, they were not doing so well with critics, and Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap left them in kind of a low point. So low that despite the album being released internationally, it was not actually released in the United States. Not until 1981, which was way after AC/DC had become the ultimate powerhouse that we know them as today. But that didn't stop them. They pressed right on, and then they released their fourth studio album in 1977 entitled Let There Be Rock. And that is what I am reviewing tonight. Now, this right here is the front cover. I really love that front cover, by the way. And before I go any further, I just got to get something out of the way. Yes, just like those first three albums, the track listing for Let There Be Rock differs between the Australian release and the international release. So which one am I going to be reviewing? Well, it's going to be the version that I just happen to own on vinyl, which is the international version, which is the version most people are acquainted with. Honestly, the Australian version on vinyl, that thing is way too expensive, and I don't really feel like forking over hundreds of dollars. So, sorry. But anyways, let's go ahead and see what we have here over on the back. We have a picture of lead guitarist Angus Young, and let's go ahead and see who actually plays on this thing. Well, we have Bon Scott on lead vocals, and he was the lead vocalist on their first 6 studio releases. We have the brothers, Angus and Malcolm Young, on guitar, and Malcolm Young, may he rest in peace. We have Mark Evans on the bass guitar. He's been in the band ever since the TNT album, and this would be his last album with the band. He was replaced by Cliff Williams on the following album. And then we have Phil Rudd on drums. He's been on the majority of their albums, not all of them, but the majority of them, and he's definitely been with them throughout their albums and time period of success, so we have that at least. But that is the lineup, and like I said, this lineup lasted 3 albums, and this would be the very last one. So, let's go over here to side number 1. We really, start things out coming right out and saying it, setting the stage for the sleazy atmosphere that this band is so well known for. The very first track is called Go Down. And I mean, the lyrics pretty much jive with the title. I mean, just listen to this. We have licking on that licking stick the way you do. You've got the lips to make a strong man weak and a healthy prey. Tell you ain't just the way you speak, you know, it's just the way you go down, go down, go down, go down, and yes, he says that like 8 times. So yes, the song is pretty ridiculous, but it's a great opener. I mean, it starts out, and you can kind of hear Bon in the background getting the band all riled up and everything, ready to go, and then it just kicks in with da-do-nom, 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 and then we got a nice little swinging beat. It's kind of soft while the verse is going on. But after that verse is over, once again, the band comes right back in. And like I said before, Bon's just repeating the lines to go down, go down, and go down. And it's a really, really good opener. Not exactly one of the songs that the band is most well known for, but I really, really like it. Then we have Dog Eat Dog, which, again, starts out a little bit slow, but it does start kicking up a bit. And basically, again, it's another very, very, very sleazy rocker, and I really do enjoy this. I have heard them, well, I wasn't actually at this show, but I've heard of them still playing this song in concert, and I think that's really incredible. I mean, it's not exactly their best hit, but it is a really, really great song. And something I gotta say about the sound on this album. It's incredibly raw, and it really straddles the line between being too underproduced and too overproduced very, very well. I think they strike a very, very good balance. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty straightforward, but I really, really love it. But then we come to what is considered by many to be the big magnum opus. We have the title track, and this thing is an absolute beast, okay? It comes right out of the gate and just starts rolling. It starts out, and when the band kicks in after like 2 seconds into the song, and it's going very, 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 very fast, and it's just an explosive opener. And then it kind of levels off for a bit during the verse. We only hear the bass, and Bon is singing over it, and he's telling kind of a fictionalized story of the formation of rock and roll going all the way back to the 50s, and yeah, he embellished and fabricated quite a bit, but it's entertaining to say the least. But yes, after that verse, after the verse, the band starts kicking in, and there's not really a chorus, it's just Bon going, "Oh, let there be rock!" And then the band just starts exploding and exploding and exploding until it goes once back again into that bass line throughout the second verse. But after that, this thing has an incredible final kind of section, I guess we could say. The band is now fully in force, and it starts building and building and building, and boy, the ending is such an explosion. I love it. I think they always play this one live. I can say this. I own 3 of their live albums on CD and vinyl. Let There Be Rock is on all of them. It's great. And in the middle, on the live versions, they really provide a chance for Angus Young to perform a guitar solo, and it's incredible. I saw these guys live once. He did perform a guitar solo in the middle of Let There Be Rock, and it was amazing, and I loved every second of it. And Let There Be Rock is definitely one of the greatest AC/DC songs ever. It's the kind of song that may not be very well known to the very casual fans, but people who at least have an understanding and know kind of an overview of the band recognize Let There Be Rock as one of the greatest songs ever written. And then it concludes with Bad Boy Boogie. Again, it reminds me a lot of Dog Eat Dog. It's another kind of sleazy number, and speaking of that, I actually have several songs by various artists called Bad Boy Boogie, but this is the earliest one that I think that I have. But, I mean, it's great. It's another pretty solid song, pretty solid number, but honestly, the best song from side number 1 is going to be the title track. The rest is really, really good, but I have got to get to the title track, one of my favorite songs ever. So let's go ahead and see how side 2 does. It kicks off with Problem Child, and this is really where I kind of have to fill you in on why exactly this song is on here. As stated previously, the track listing between the international version and the Australian version is different. The Australian version, which I guess could be considered the official version, Problem Child is not on there. Instead, Crab City and Blue is on there. On the international version, Crab City and Blue was removed for some reason and replaced with Problem Child. Well, Problem Child was previously released on Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. So if you're building an AC/DC collection and you have both Let There Be Rock and Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap, you got Problem Child twice. So now we got that out of the way. But it's a great song, okay? I wouldn't call it fast, but it's very, very upbeat and has a very, I don't know how to say this, but it's very upbeat, and it definitely isn't a dark song by any stretch of the imagination, but it's got a great rhythm, it's got great lyrics, everything about it I love, and I definitely think it's a great song, so we have that at least. But, you know, I am hot, and when I'm not, I'm cold as ice. Great song. So now we move to the second song from side number 2, and it's called Overdose. And this one is a little bit different than some of the previous songs. Starts out, and it just has a very, very soft, another bluesy guitar intro. But then things start picking up after about a minute or so, and this thing is very different from the rest of the songs. This is a much darker song. This is a much more raw song, and I really think it's a very welcome change because this thing is dark, this thing is kind of murky in some places, but it's excellent. He overdosed on you, so I'm guessing he's talking to a girl or something, and his love or his lust for her, which is probably the case, he lusts for her so much, it's almost like an overdose, and it's a great song, highly, highly recommended. Then we have Hell Ain't a Bad Place to Be, which is one of the more widely recognized songs from this album, and I definitely respect that and everything, but I think it's kind of disposable and might actually be the weakest song on here. Don't get me wrong, everything on this album is great, but I think Hell Ain't a Bad Place to Be, is probably, let me rephrase, the least good song on this album. But I mean, it's, again, upbeat, it's not exactly fast, but it's got a pretty grooving rhythm to it, and, you know, I recommend it. But then it concludes with Whole Lotta Rosie, and I can definitely feel the Led Zeppelin influences on this song. I actually, as a kid, I got into AC/DC before Led Zeppelin, so I heard this song before Black Dog by Led Zeppelin, and when I heard Black Dog by Led Zeppelin on the radio, I was like, hey, that sounds a lot like Whole Lotta Rosie. Well, the truth is this, Whole Lotta Rosie sounds a lot like Black Dog. I mean, again, the rhythm, at least in the intro, is very, very similar. Da-da-na-na-na-na, da-da-na-na-na-na. And again, it's a concert classic. It's almost always performed live, and most AC/DC fans will again cite this one as one of the best AC/DC songs. It's bluesy, it's sleazy, but it's also very, very hard rocking and aggressive, and I, again, really love it. From what I understand, the song is about a very, very obese woman, a Tasmanian woman, that Bon Scott had on and off again one-night stands with, and she was apparently rather large. And I guess Bon decided to mock her and write a song about her, and he even provides her measurements in the song. It's in the lyrics, and that's kind of a chauvinistic thing to do, but at the same time, it jives very well with what this band has established themselves at, and I love it. The crowd always loves it whenever it's played, and I'm really glad that this song exists. Now, apparently, I think it was last year, they finally did figure out who the woman was that this song was written about, and to kind of be a little bit more serious, the woman actually did lose her life in 1979, which I think was just before Bon Scott tragically lost his life. And she had been working as a sex worker, so it seems like she had a very, very rough life. So again, I just want to make this clear. I am not trying to make light of someone's very unfortunate situation. I am just praising a very, very great song and a very, very great album. But my favorite from side 2 is probably Overdose, just because it's darker and it's a lot different from everything else that we hear on this album. And to tell you the truth, variety is not something that's very prevalent in AC/DC, so it's very nice to have some whenever it's available. Now, one last thing I would like to talk about. Which version of this album do I recommend? Well, it's either going to be the international version that I just reviewed, or it's going to be the Australian version, which I only have on CD. My answer may surprise you because my answer is this. It depends. First of all, the international version does have the better artwork. I'm just going to say that straight up, but that's a pretty minor quality of the album because we don't listen with our eyes, we listen with our ears. So let's just compare the track list. Zoom in right there. Okay, both versions start off with Go Down. Then both versions have Dog Eat Dog. Then both versions have the title track. Then both versions have Bad Boy Boogie. The first side of both versions is identical. But on the international version, we get Overdose as track 5. It's track 6 on the international version, but it's the same no matter what, so it's on both versions, so whatever. They both end with Whole Lotta Rosie. The 7th track on both versions is Hell Ain't a Bad Place to Be. This is the only difference. The international version has Problem Child. The Australian version has Crab City in Blue. I'm going to say straight up, Crab City in Blue is ridiculous. It's not even that good of a song. On the Australian version, Crab City in Blue is my least favorite song. However, say this straight up, the international version, because Problem Child is better than Crab City in Blue, the international version is the better version. So, if you just want to buy Let There Be Rock, and that is the only AC/DC album you are ever going to own, you should get the international version. However, if you want to start a collection, there is no point in getting the international version, because Problem Child is also on Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap, which will be in your collection regardless. And Problem Child is on both versions of Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap, the international and the Australian. And actually, this version of Problem Child is shortened. On the Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap album, there's a little coda at the end that Let There Be Rock removes for some reason. So, if you want to collect all of them, you should get the Australian version, because you will get Crab City in Blue, and Crab City in Blue is not available on any of the international versions of any AC/DC album. So, we have that. I can't fully say which version I want to recommend, because again, it depends on whether you want to start a collection or not. So anyways, that concludes my review tonight of Let There Be Rock. Next time, we're going to take a look at a band that was on fire. But until then, have a very pleasant evening.